Hi, welcome to the small shed. This week it seems to be all about electrics again. Well, it seems that the first thing to greet me was a frost, one of the first mornings this year that we've had any sort of really cold weather, and I popped out to go and start the Mini up just to make sure it was okay, because my wife was due to go out and had the usual trouble with doors being frozen solid and things like that. But of course, when I got in it, what happened but the usual. Which is a dead battery. I've only had this one about 4 years, so I had a quick look, and first thing I was worried about was whether it was the alternator rather than the battery, because the battery wasn't that old. So it's a fairly quick and easy way to check that out. Just put a meter across the battery itself, and you can read the voltage when it's effectively standing. I'd put it on charge just to get a bit more life into it, and there's 12 volts in there, and when you turn things on it goes down a bit, and you start the engine and it runs down to about 9, but at least it tells me that the alternator's working, because it then, once it gets going, runs up to about 14.5 volts, which shows that there's current being produced by the engine that's going into the battery and charging it up. So that in itself was worth knowing, because I was slightly worried that it was the alternator rather than the battery. The first battery had lasted 12 years on the Mini. This one has only lasted about 4 or 5, and probably is an indication of what happens when you buy a cheap Halford's battery against the Bosch one that was fitted as standard. So I went and got a new Bosch battery. That's been fitted now. I'm not going to bother showing you all about fitting a battery in a Mini. It's not that difficult. There's 2 bolts and the terminals and you're away. It's more about the actual finding out whether it was the battery or the alternator that was of interest. The battery itself will hold some charge, so rather than just throw it away, I've decided it is down for recycling and will be put to good use in the future. I think I'm looking at possibly doing an off-grid thing for the shed, so that'll be put into use there. So now we're on to the main event. First of all, a bit of unboxing. I've had a new toy arrive in the post this week, and then we'll just have a quick look at the other electrical things that came in, which in this case was my wife's CD player that was playing up. But first of all we'll have a look at the unboxing. Now this is something that's just arrived, so we'll have a look and see what's been delivered. Trouble is, you tend to lose track of what's been ordered. I haven't got really much of a clue as to what it is. Big box. New, made in China. Oh, I should have known. Hardly a great surprise. Ah! Oh wow! This is the circle drilling jig that I came across as a result of watching Manor Wood's site. He got it from Banggood. Now I was going to make one of these. I've got one that I did very temporarily when I was working on the Cyclone, and I made a circle jig, and it worked perfectly well, only that every time you do a different size you had to drill a new hole. And I promised myself I'd make a new jig, and was all set to do that, and I had a video set up to do that in the future. And then I happened to see this, and it was a silly price. I forget what it was now, I'll have a look in a minute. And I thought, well, it was worth a look. It's a beautiful piece of, I can't make up my mind what it is. I think actually it's plastic. It looks almost like an anodised aluminium, but it's plastic. It's gorgeous, that. I love that. I could stroke that all day. What happens, you, by the look of it, you put your pin in there, your router attaches there. There are different base plates. There are 3 of these, different sizes for different routers. And then, I'm assuming you then, yes, screw a, that's it. That sets the distance. And then if you want to go in closer, you turn it round the other way. And that goes in the other end. So that means you can get really tight in with a circle, which was something I couldn't have done with the old one, because I think I got as close in as that, but of course once you get underneath the base plate you can't do it, whereas this will go right the way in, almost up to the collet of the router. That is gorgeous, I like that. Yeah, very nice. There's all sorts of other bits and pieces with it. Drill, don't know what that's for, but lots of screws. Looks like some sort of a bush. No, I don't know. I haven't got a clue what some of these bits are for. I will have a look and come back and do a decent review of it later on. What I'm also going to do, because this was such a silly price, I am going to make one still, and I'm going to see how much it costs to make one. Very much the same. This was pretty much what I was intending to do with Perspex, and either router out a groove and have a sliding piece, or to do 2 pieces of Perspex and glue them together to form the rebate. But I'm going to do that as a separate thing in the future, which will be interesting to see how they compare in terms of cost, because I suspect it will not be possible to make one satisfactorily for the sort of money you've bought that for, because Perspex in itself is fairly expensive, and there's, you know, nuts and bolts and all sorts of things that add up the cost. And even if you do, it will probably mean that you spend, you know, 7 or 8 hours doing something to save you £2. So that's a future vid, but that in itself is the kit that you get from Banggood. I'll put a link below as to where that came from, but it is a beautiful piece of so I really can't make it. I'm sure it's plastic, but it really almost looks and feels like anodised aluminium. Beautiful, just a job. I've just checked, this was £18.89 shipped. I ordered it on the 6th of January and it arrived on, now today's the 18th I think, no 13th. It arrived on Friday, today's Sunday, so it would have been about the 10th. So it's taken about 3 or 4 days. It's come from a supplier in England, but for less than £19, that is very nice. Now, sorry to keep coming back to this with revisits, but the more I've looked at it, the more I can start to understand what's going on with it. It's broadly as I had originally said. The only thing is that rather than the knob I was using, there is a proper screwed knob which sets the actual point at which you put the pivot in, and that will go in at either end. Very simple, just enables it to hold it together. The 2 lugs, well, we'll start with the drill as well. I said I didn't know what the drill was for. that is the same size as the pin on the circle jig itself, so that's for you to drill your centre point of your circle. So that is straightforward enough. As I say, you screw the holder in then and then run it round at that. There are 4 screws in there which I take it are replacements if you haven't got screws to screw it into your preferred router. Sadly I haven't got the Katsu with me at the moment because it's on loan again, but that appears to be that you can screw any router into it as long as the spacings fit properly. The depth stop there that is with it, I'm assuming is for the drill to leave, to give you a depth on the actual drill itself, so that you can drill a hole that's no deeper than needed be. There is a circular bush which fits in nicely from one side, dead centre. It doesn't fit in the other way as well. It's specifically designed to go underneath. And the other piece, I didn't know what it was, is a 1/4 inch shaft, which is the same size as a router bit. Push that through, then mount your router, and it enables you to make it dead centre before you tighten the screws up, so that you know that your bit is actually dead centre in that hole, and then you can take that out. So that's what that's for. The last bit that was confusing me was these 2 threaded bushes, rods. I thought they were to do with screwing that on, but they're not. They screw into the holes on the side of the jig, or at least this is what I'm assuming they're for. There are 2 threaded holes on either side diagonally opposite on here, and if I'm not much, because there's no instructions with this at all, if I'm not much mistaken, I believe these are so that you can run the guide down a thin piece of wood, knowing full well that if you do that and pull it tight, that will always then be dead centre. So it will put you a straight groove all the way down a piece of timber or anything else you're cutting, and the other 2 holes are slightly further apart, presumably for a bigger section. That is what I'm assuming it's for. If it's not, it's pretty good at doing it anyway. Let's put those at a larger spacing. But it always means that whatever you have is going to be dead centre. However wide it is within reason, you just rotate it until they touch, and then run your guide up and down, and it keeps it right down the middle. So that's what that piece is for. So that's at least explained all the pieces that I've got. I think I can now understand it. I'll do a proper review of it when I get it up and running and get the Katsu back. And as I say, I will do a build your own as well, just to see how they compare, but the initial looks I've had at the prices of materials, there is no way you're ever going to buy anything to make one of these that's half decent for the money that you pay for it ready made for you by somebody else. So it's slightly against the ethos of making everything yourself. I shall still make one, but it really isn't worth it. Lovely piece of kit. Move on. Yeah, this is my wife's CD player that seems to have started to play up, so it's either terminally ill or we might be able to see what we can do to get it going, but at the moment it doesn't want to know, I don't think. Right, okay, let's have a look at that and see what we can do with that. I suspect it might be just dirt on it somewhere. I'm going to clean the lens. There's a little lens down in there. Got some cotton buds, a bit of isopropyl alcohol. Might do the trick, otherwise it's probably for the junkyard. Dry it off again. Can't see any other reason why it wouldn't work, or it would work intermittently. That seems to have done the trick. I've just given the outside a wipe, so it gives some indication of the sort of state that these things get into, just being left in normal rooms, that they get filthy. And I think it was just muck on the lens in there. I gave the CD a wipe as well, but it was doing it on several of them, so I think we've solved the problem relatively straightforwardly and easily. Make sure. Yep. Good. One down. And just one quick update before we go. You may recall the other week I did some work on some resin castings, and I was making some masters for a model at the Model Railway Club that I'm in. The guy that's building the building itself, the pump house, turned up with it last night. It hasn't got the roof finished yet, but it gives a pretty good idea of what it's all achieving, and it looks pretty smart to me. So I just thought you might like to have a look at that and see what it's going to be all for. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It just goes to highlight that a lot of these things that we have today that we think of as being disposable are very often not. My wife was quite happy to throw that CD player away and get a new one, because they're relatively cheap and pretty much normally you would think they're unserviceable. You can't take them apart and find anything wrong with them. But in this instance it's just simply a build-up of dust and dirt inside the lens itself, and it only needs a quick wipe and it's away. There's several things we've done like that in the past in videos, and I shall continue to do so. At least it's worth taking things apart. If you're going to throw it away anyway, you've got nothing to lose, and 9 times out of 10 you can find out what's wrong with it and get it going again, and save the planet a bit, if nothing else, as well as a few pounds. So hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please press like and subscribe, comment, whatever. I'll catch up with you next week, and hopefully we'll have something different. See you then. Bye.